Hello, and welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight. As we leave the day behind, find a comfortable position, letting your head rest softly, feeling the weight of the blanket over you, a gentle, reassuring pressure. Take a slow, deep breath in, and as you breathe out, let go of any thoughts of the day, any lists, any worries. Just let them drift away on your breath, like little clouds dissolving in a clear sky. There is nothing you need to do now, nothing to figure out, and nowhere you need to be, except right here, in this quiet space we have created. Allow your body to grow heavy, your muscles to soften, from the tips of your toes to the top of your head. Tonight, we are going to travel. Not with any effort, but by simply letting our minds drift, like a small, unmanned reed boat, pushed gently by the current, down a long, slow river. Our destination is a place of warm sun, rich earth, and ancient rhythms. We are drifting back in time, thousands of years, to the banks of the mighty and peaceful River Nile. Let the sound of my voice be your guide, a gentle current to follow, as we explore the quiet, everyday lives of the people who called this fertile valley home. Just relax and listen. Akhet. Inside the simple mud-brick homes, life continued its gentle pace. Imagine Kahneman's wife, Merit. Their house is small, with just a few rooms. The walls are made of sun-dried bricks, a mixture of Nile mud and straw, which keeps the inside cool, even on the warmest days. The floors are packed earth, swept clean each morning. Merit spends part of her day preparing food. Her most important task is grinding grain. She kneels before a saddle quern, a long, sloping stone. In her hands is a smaller, rounded stone. She places a handful of emmer wheat or barley onto the quern and begins to grind, rocking the small stone back and forth, back and forth. It's a slow, laborious process. The sound is a soft, gritty rhythm that has filled this home for generations. It takes hours to produce enough flour for the day's bread, but there is no hurry. The rhythm is meditative. The flour she makes is coarse. She mixes it with water, and perhaps a little honey or some wild yeast to form a dough. She shapes it into small, flat, round loaves. These she bakes not in an oven, but on a hot stone placed over the embers of their small cooking fire, or on the side of a large clay pot. The smell of baking bread, warm, earthy, and comforting, fills the small home. This was the staple food, bread, and with it, they drank a thick, nutritious beer, also made from barley or wheat. It wasn't like the beer we know today. It was cloudy and more like a liquid food, a fundamental part of their diet for everyone, including the children. When she isn't preparing food, Merit might sit in the doorway, where the light is best, and spin flax into thread. She uses a simple drop spindle, a small wooden stick weighted with a clay whorl. She teases out the pale fibers of the flax plant, twisting them together as the spindle spins down towards the floor. A gentle, repetitive dance of hand and eye. The thread she creates will be woven into linen, the fabric of ancient Egypt. From the coarsest cloth for work clothes and sails to the finest, almost transparent royal linen, it all began this way, with the patient spinning of thread, hour after hour. The days of the inundation were filled with these small, essential, and peaceful tasks. Life was lived close to the family and close to the earth, even when the earth itself was hidden beneath the water. Akhet. Inside the simple mud-brick homes, life continued its gentle pace. Imagine Kahneman's wife, Merit. Their house is small, with just a few rooms. The walls are made of sun-dried bricks, a mixture of Nile mud and straw, which keeps the inside cool even on the warmest days. The floors are packed earth, swept clean each morning. Merritt spends part of her day preparing food. Her most important task is grinding grain. She kneels before a saddle quern, a long, sloping stone. In her hands is a smaller, rounded stone. She places a handful of emmer wheat or barley onto the quern and begins to grind, rocking the small stone back and forth, back and forth. It's a slow, laborious process. The sound is a soft, gritty rhythm that has filled this home for generations. It takes hours to produce enough flour for the day's bread, but there is no hurry. The rhythm is meditative. The flour she makes is coarse. She mixes it with water and perhaps a little honey or some wild yeast to form a dough. She shapes it into small, flat, round loaves. These she bakes not in an oven, but on a hot stone placed over the embers of their small cooking fire, or on the side of a large clay pot. The smell of baking bread, warm, earthy, and comforting, fills the small home. This was the staple food, bread, and with it, they drank a thick, nutritious beer, also made from barley or wheat. It wasn't like the beer we know today. It was cloudy and more like a liquid food, a fundamental part of their diet for everyone, including the children. When she isn't preparing food, Merritt might sit in the doorway, where the light is best, and spin flax into thread. She uses a simple drop spindle, a small wooden stick weighted with a clay whorl. She teases out the pale fibers of the flax plant, twisting them together as the spindle spins down towards the floor. A gentle, repetitive dance of hand and eye. The thread she creates will be woven into linen, the fabric of ancient Egypt. From the coarsest cloth for work clothes and sails to the finest, almost transparent royal linen, it all began this way, with the patient spinning of thread, hour after hour. The days of the inundation were filled with these small, essential, and peaceful tasks. Life was lived close to the family and close to the earth, even when the earth itself was hidden beneath the water.
Then, as surely as it arrived, the flood began to retreat. The water level would drop, day by day, pulling back into the river's main channel. And what it left behind was the reason for Egypt's existence point, a fresh, thick, and perfectly even layer of black silt. The Egyptians called their country Kemet, the Black Land, after this precious soil. It was incredibly fertile, rich with the minerals and nutrients the crops would need, and it was soft and easy to work. This marked the beginning of the second season. Peret, the season of growing. A quiet excitement would fill the villages. The time of waiting was over. The time of work had begun. Kenneman would retrieve his newly mended plow. It was a simple tool, a wooden frame with a small blade, perhaps tipped with bronze, designed not to turn the soil over, but just to break up the surface of the new silt, creating furrows for the seeds. He would lead his 2 oxen out to the field. You can almost hear the soft creak of the wooden yoke as he settles it across their shoulders. The air is cool and damp in the early morning. It smells of wet earth and vegetation. He guides the oxen walking behind the plow, calling out soft commands. They move slowly, steadily across the field. The plow cuts a shallow line in the dark earth. It is not heavy work, for the soil is soft and yielding. It is a rhythmic, plodding journey back and forth, from one end of the field to the other. Behind him, Merritt, or one of their older children, follows with a bag of seed. They walk along the newly made furrows, scattering the grain with a wide, sweeping motion of their arm. A golden arc of emmer, wheat or barley seed, hangs in the air for a moment before settling onto the black soil. Once the seed was sown, there was no need for a harrow. Instead, they would often drive a small flock of sheep or goats across the newly seeded field. The gentle trampling of their hooves was just enough to press the precious seeds into the soft, moist earth, protecting them from the wind and hungry birds. The first part of the work was done. The promise of the harvest was now tucked safely into the black land.
The silt held moisture for a long time, but as the sun grew stronger, the young plants would need more water. The Nile was now low in its banks, far below the level of the fields, so the Egyptians had to bring the water to the crops. They did this with a network of small canals and ditches that crisscrossed the farmland. And to lift the water from the main canals into these ditches, they used a simple, ingenious device called a shadoof. Imagine Kenneman later in the season. The sun is warm on his back. The wheat in his field is now a vibrant, shimmering green carpet of young shoots. He stands beside a larger canal, next to the shadoof. It's a simple machine, a long wooden pole balanced on a central pillar. On one end of the pole is a bucket, perhaps made of leather or woven reeds. On the other end is a heavy counterweight, a large lump of dried Nile clay. Kenneman pulls down on a rope attached to the bucket end, lowering it into the canal. It fills with a deep, gurgling sound. The counterweight on the other end rises high into the air. Then, he lets the counterweight do the work. The heavy clay ball swings down, and the now full bucket of water rises effortlessly from the canal. With a gentle push, he swings the pole over a small ditch that runs into his field. He tips the bucket, and a cascade of cool, clear water splashes down, beginning its slow journey to the roots of his thirsty crops. Pull down. Let the water fill. Let the weight lift. Swing the pole. Tip the bucket. Let the water flow. It is a slow, rhythmic, almost meditative motion, back and forth all day long. The only sounds are the creak of the wooden pole, the splash of the water, and the gentle sigh of the breeze through the young wheat. This was the quiet work of Pere. Tending the fields was not just about planting. It was about this careful, patient nurturing of new life. Besides the essential wheat and barley, families would tend small vegetable gardens near their homes. They grew lentils and chickpeas, onions, garlic, and leeks. Lettuce, cucumbers, and melons grew in the fertile soil, providing variety and freshness to their daily meals of bread and beer. Life in this season was one of quiet optimism, of watching the green shoots grow taller and stronger each day, a visible sign of the Nile's enduring promise. Once the grain was cut and bundled, the work was not yet finished. The edible seeds had to be separated from the inedible stalk and husk. The sheaves would be carried to a special area near the village, the threshing floor. This was a large, circular space of hard-packed earth, swept clean. The sheaves were untied and spread in a thick layer across the floor. Then, the oxen were brought in once more. They were led onto the threshing floor and were made to walk around and around in a slow, endless circle, their heavy hooves treading on the stalks. This action, called threshing, broke the heads of grain open, releasing the small, heavy seeds. It was a slow, patient process. A boy might walk with the oxen to keep them moving, while a man raked and turned the straw to ensure it was all evenly trodden. The air would be filled with the dry, sweet smell of crushed straw. After hours of threshing, the floor would be covered in a mixture of three things: the heavy grain, the lighter broken husks and bits of stalk called chaff, and the long crushed straw. The straw was raked away, to be used for animal bedding, for fuel, or as a vital ingredient in making new mud bricks. What remained was a mixture of grain and chaff. And now came the most delicate and beautiful part of the process: winnowing. This was usually done by the women. They would wait for a day with a steady, gentle breeze, Standing on the threshing floor, they would use large, shallow wooden scoops or baskets. They would fill their scoop with the grain and chaff mixture, lift it high, and skillfully toss the contents into the air. It was a gesture of beautiful, practiced grace. The heavy grain, being dense, would fall almost straight back down into the basket or onto a clean mat at their feet. But the light, papery chaff would be caught by the breeze and carried away, drifting off to settle a short distance away. Imagine the scene in the late afternoon. The sun is low and golden. A woman tosses the grain into the air. The cloud of chaff catches the light, glowing for a moment like a cloud of golden dust, a million tiny sunlit specks before whispering away on the wind. Toss and catch, over and over again. The only sound is the rustle of the grain, the whisper of the wind, and the soft thud of the cleaned seed falling back to the mat. It was a simple, yet perfect way of using nature itself to complete the harvest. Finally, the grain was clean. Piles of golden wheat and barley, the wealth of the community, lay shining in the sun. A portion would be taken as taxes by the scribes of the local temple or the pharaoh, measured carefully and recorded on papyrus scrolls. The rest would be stored in the village granaries, tall, beehive-shaped structures of mud brick, where it would be kept safe and dry, ready to be ground into flour for the year ahead. The sight of a full granary was the ultimate symbol of peace and prosperity. Life was not all work. The rhythm of the seasons was also marked by festivals, times for the community to come together to honor the gods, celebrate their good fortune, and simply enjoy a break from their labors. These were not always grand state occasions, but often smaller, local celebrations. A harvest festival, after the grain was safely stored, was a time of great joy. Imagine the village in the evening, after the last of the grain is secured. The air is cooler now. The scent of cooking is different tonight. Not just the usual bread, but perhaps roasted fowl, or fish from the river, seasoned with garlic and herbs. There is more food than usual, a feast to be shared. Families would gather, wearing their best, clean white linen. They would bring offerings to the small village shrine, a portion of the new grain, a jar of beer, a handful of dates, or a bouquet of blue lotus flowers gathered from the river's edge. These were simple gifts of thanks. There might be music, not a loud band, but perhaps the gentle, breathy sound of a reed flute, its simple melody drifting on the evening air. Perhaps the soft, rhythmic tapping of a small drum or the clapping of hands. Sometimes there were larger, more organized festivals, like the Opet Festival or the Beautiful Feast of the Valley. In these, the statue of a great god, hidden in a shrine, would be carried out from its temple, placed on a sacred boat or bark, and decorated with gold and flowers. It would be carried on the shoulders of priests in a great procession. The people of the villages would line the route, not to see the statue itself, which was always veiled, but to be in its presence. They would call out praises, lay palm fronds on the path, and feel a connection to the divine world that governed their own. These processions were slow, dignified, and beautiful. They were a public expression of the faith that underpinned their entire world, a faith that saw the divine in the rising sun, the flooding river, and the golden grain. These festivals were the punctuation marks in the long sentence of the year. They renewed the bonds of the community, reaffirmed their relationship with their gods, and provided moments of shared joy and peace that sustained them through the cycle of work. And now, our journey beside the Nile is coming to a close. The harvest festival is over. The last notes of the flute have faded away. The sun has long since set behind the western cliffs, which the Egyptians saw as the gateway to the afterlife. The sky is now a deep, deep velvet, strewn with a brilliant canopy of stars. With no city lights, the stars here are brighter than you can imagine. They look like a fine powder of diamonds scattered across the heavens. Kenneman and Merritt and their children are at home. On hot nights like this, the family might climb the simple ladder to their flat roof to sleep in the open, where the air is cooler. They lie on reed mats, looking up at the familiar patterns of the stars, which they saw as gods sailing their boats across the night sky. The world is quiet now. The only sounds are the gentle lapping of the Nile against its banks, the ceaseless, soft chirping of the crickets, and the distant bark of a dog in another village. The day's work is done. The fields are resting. The granaries are full. There is a deep, abiding sense of peace, a sense that all is right with the world. Just as the farmer finds his rest after a long day in the sun, so too can you now find your rest. Feel the quiet of the Egyptian night settling over you. The air is cool and soft on your skin. Your body is heavy and relaxed, sinking gently into the surface beneath you. Your breathing is slow and steady, like the timeless flow of the great river itself. There is nothing left to do but drift, drifting down that long, slow river into deep, peaceful sleep. Let the last of your thoughts dissolve like ripples on the water. Relax and let go. The Nile is quiet. The village is sleeping. And now, it is time for you to sleep too. Sleep well. Good night.